Morning, everyone. My name is Joanna of AK Contemporary, and today I'm talking to Laurence Edwards, an internationally renowned contemporary British figurative sculptor, ahead of his upcoming joint solo show held with Adam David Taylor at AKA Contemporary from the 1st of September. Laurence is an elected fellow of Royal Society of British Sculptors since 2012. He exhibits in United Kingdom and Australia. And some of his most notable recent sculptures include Man of Stones, unveiled in 2019 at the Sainsbury Centre in Norwich, a 26-foot-high yachtsman installed near A12 highway in Suffolk in 2021, and a 6-foot-high chthonic head placed at the beach in Lowestoft in 2023, amongst other works and exhibitions. Okay, morning, Laurence.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Morning.
time this morning. We're talking today ahead of your upcoming exhibition, Elision, at AKA Contemporary, starting on the 1st of September, which is a joint solo show held with Adam David Taylor. So to begin with, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about your vision for the exhibition, and in particular, if you don't mind, in terms of the visual dynamic between yours and Adam's work.
Yes, well, it was when I first saw Adam's work at the AK Gallery. I was struck by, I didn't know who he was or where he came from or anything. And I had an immediate weird affinity with the work. And when it was suggested that I exhibit with him, I was really very excited. And then found out that he was working in similar landscape to me, i.e. the estuarine coastline area of Pembrokeshire. Now, I'm based in Suffolk on the East Coast, and I have a similar estuarine kind of subject matter, really, or place. And it was fascinating to think that I connected and I saw it and I felt it in his work in a completely different way to the way I'm working. So I was intrigued by the connection and the relationship between our visions, really, and our thinking. And the artists speak. I haven't spoken much to Adam, so I'm really enjoying the fact that, my connection to Adam is through his paintings, and that our work is the thing that's communicating. So that's intriguing to me. It's quite unusual, actually.
Yeah, it's unusual. Well, my personal take on it, amongst some of the other conclusions, I just think it strikes me, how it kind of expresses something profoundly universal when it comes to human connection and interpretation of nature, I think. But obviously everybody are going to have a slightly different take, I suppose. Both you and Adam have very different artistic approaches, as you mentioned. However, you both seem to be exploring the concepts of space and human presence in connection with landscape. Even more so, I think, in your sculptures, which are not only characteristic for the coarse surface and frequent merging with the natural elements they interact with, but also some are placed within the landscape, like the yachtsman or the chthonic head. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about this close connection with the nature and the landscape.
Yes, well, it's very interesting because I realized, even this weekend I was kind of in the house and I was kind of trapped, and I felt I've got to get out. And the minute I got out, I was in amongst landscape and I felt right. It was very strange. And I thought, I don't just pay lip service to this whole feeling of being in landscape. It actually does sort of sort my vibes out, sort my energies out. So my kind of sense of myself is always kind of at rest or at peace or stimulated even by landscape. And I think the same goes for my sculptures. I spent my childhood in the marshland and the estuaries of this area, and often used to find myself literally carving gateposts with wood chisels. Used to take wood chisels out in a bag and literally sit in a field in the afternoon and carve some poor farmer's gatepost, a head or something. And so I often felt that being creative outside in the landscape was very important, and it's carried through to today. Those kind of, the child in me has never left, and I find that my sculpture is activated by landscape, and dare I say, I find that landscape is often activated by my sculpture, or at least my perception of landscape anyway. And I feel that you creating a focal point that's not natural in a sense, but is kind of a human equivalent really sometimes allows one to rest the eye and rest the self, the sense of the self in landscape. And for example, the Yoxman, the minute it went in, it felt like if you removed it, there'd be a gaping hole. And now every time I pass it, I'm aware of light, I'm aware of ambience, I'm aware of time, I'm aware of time of day, I'm aware of weather, I'm aware of so many things that I wasn't before. And it's not because I'm not aware, I don't think. Like I know I can see a tree and I understand light on a tree and I understand how it is changing through the seasons, but I'm arrested and I'm aware and I'm conscious because it's kind of a human equivalent. And I feel the same happens with the laying figure in the marshes, the Thousand Tides. You know, he's slowly immersing, and I sense that I feel him in that landscape, and I think others do too. I think there's an empathy there, and I think the older I get and the more kind of familiar with material I get and making bodies, I'm able to affect a feeling of empathy, and so I feel that there's a connection, and especially the head as well on the beach, being washed into the waves every day. People connected to that, and they seem to connect to a sense of history, a sense of archaeology, a sense of time, and the elements. And I think placing objects in space, which are of human objects, for me anyway, allow that moment to happen, and it's very important. And I feel that in Adam's work, he is occupying it, his consciousness is in the space, but he leaves the space, and often there's a gesture, a kind of a physical painterly mark, which kind of marks human presence. And I often feel that, you know, I almost do that with my figures in the real space. You know, I kind of make that mark, make that human presence felt, and I really feel it in Adam's work in a much quieter and more, I suppose you'd call it, kind of humble way. I think mine are probably a bit.
Okay, very powerful words, I would say. Yeah, I think when I was looking at your work, and I was looking at Adam's work, to me as well, it kind of evokes something archetypal almost in human and nature oneness, especially in matter, kind of oneness in matter. I'm not sure if it makes sense, but it's kind of just a feeling that, especially when you put the two together, they kind of speak to each other in this context.
They do, yes. Well, I'm hoping they will. I mean, we're designing the catalogue as we speak, and it's really interesting watching the pages unfold and seeing how the work is relating and the kind of the dance through the pages of the work. There's kind of a physical presence of a figure at one moment, and then there's this beautiful painterly space in the next, and it's just a beautiful dialogue. So I'm really enjoying that, what you call a dialogue, really. I mean, I hate to use art jargon. I mean, but there is certainly a conversation that's being had between the work, and I feel it's going to show up. I've kind of worked out the spaces in my head in the gallery and hoping that it all pulls off. And there's definitely going to be a lovely kind of reflective kind of a mirroring of emotion and feeling through the space. The figures are going to occupy Adam's consciousness, really, which is going to be very, very exciting. So yeah, it's all very, very, really all to play for, really.
Yes, and you've put it beautifully that the figures will be occupying Adam's consciousness. You know, painted very, very nicely put.
Well, I love the fact that he's generous enough to leave that space in his work, if you know what I mean. That he's allowing the viewer to occupy his spaces. And I suppose in a sense it's difficult to do that with a sculpture. I mean, the landscape for me is doing the work, and I'm doing what the viewer does to Adam's work myself. I'm kind of occupying space, which is incredibly. I like to do it temporarily. I mean, I like to float rafts up estuaries and have figures floating in the air, on the water, or having one figure lying in the marshes which is slowly sinking. So there's never that kind of sense of permanence. There's always a sense that things will disappear and that they're fugitive, and that you will not have this experience forever. And I'm always interested in the idea that once the object is left, if it leaves any impression, a ghost in a sense, does it leave a ghost of itself? Does it leave a consciousness? Once you've experienced it, will it always be there in your mind? So when the mud flats slowly close over the figure, will you always know the figure's underneath, having seen it when he was up? And I love that kind of, I suppose, poetry, really.
Yes, thank you. Well, I've had the pleasure of talking to Adam yesterday, and we were both on the same page. We absolutely cannot wait to see the art put together in the space, especially
Brilliant.
at AKA. I mean, they have a wonderful space with all this natural light, which I think is really going to highlight the sculptural quality,
Yeah.
especially when it's put together with the paintings. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
A little bit off the subject of the exhibition, I was a little bit intrigued when I was reading your bio. You have traveled India and Nepal and studied traditional casting techniques whilst over there. And I was just wondering what influence, if any, encounters with different cultures have had on your work.
Interesting. You know what? The early days when I was setting up and building foundries, the knowledge I gleaned and the kind of confidence that I got from seeing people working with minimal facilities, minimal materials in the Western sense of the word was brilliant. It gave me so much confidence. I thought, God, you can pour metal in a hole in the ground with a lump of coal and a cow pat and a fan, and I saw so many solutions to melting metal and firing molds. It was just incredible liberation. And then I saw dizzying heights of craftsmanship and skill, which were just awe-inspiring. And then I was aware of oral history, thousands of years old, where people are still doing what their forebears had done and continuing in that tradition in a sense, but adding a bit to themselves every time, adding a bit to the process and the object every time. And I think now, 25, 30 years on, I'm seeing that what I am responding to is that sense of continuity, that sense of history lying all around us, that sense of a language that I'm engaged with and being aware of its history and being aware of the figurative language, the human language, the object maker's language. And I am very privileged to have witnessed and been a part of various studios, workshops in the company of people that are the inheritors of extraordinary skills and disciplines. So I think the big take from it all, and a lot of other kind of historic and kind of anthropological journeys that I've been on, are that it's the continuity of the human psyche, the human consciousness in time that I can bring to my work now. And it's just lovely that I can create a sense of the reciprocal. I can create hosts, places where those experiences and histories can settle and be. And I think at the end of the day, that is the important take away from this, as well as seeing people in those cultures, especially India, being incredibly respected, the craftsman being like almost a priest class, someone that's given the responsibility of bringing spiritual objects to life and giving back to a society and providing places for worship and placing idols in a sense that are revered, which you don't get in this culture so much. And they occupy the craftsmen and the artists in those places occupy a different place to the artist in this culture, and it's really lovely to experience that, witnessed it, and to believe in that as well as what art means in the contemporary world in this country in the West.
Yeah. It's kind of observing principles of craftsmanship that were lost in the industrialized world firsthand.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Are we going to see any new landscape sculptures in the East Anglia anytime soon? Are there any new exciting projects you may be currently working on?
I'm just about to embark on another very large sculpture, the size of the Yoxman, which is about 26 to 30 foot high. I'm about to start that. That's a 5-year project, and I'm beginning the consultation and the dialogue with the communities in the East at a place called Lowestoft, on the most easterly point in England, where the sun hits this country first. And that's why the head was in the beach, the chthonic head. There's a sense of just drifting in and coming in on the tide and slowly edging up the beach, almost like a turtle kind of laying eggs. The kind of feeling and the warmth the community expressed for the head was given me great confidence and belief in sculpture and what it can bring to a place. So I'm gently starting that project. I'll be having a studio in Lowestoft to develop the ideas. And I will, over the next 4 or 5 years, develop another large-scale idea, and we'll be casting it at my foundry. So yeah, we are probably going to enter the biggest project of my career so far.
Wow.
So yeah, I suppose a landscape piece, but engaging with a town and engaging with, again, the idea of a planet and the sky and the stars and the nature and the elements all coming in and around, and being a part and immersing a sculpture in that world, as well as in a kind of industrial setting. So it's going to be a fascinating job. And I'm making a very large After the Flood sculpture, which is one of my big broad sculptures with this kind of fanning figure, which we're showing in the show in Maketov. We're making that for a site in New Zealand where a new sculpture park's being placed. So I'm really excited about being on the other side of the planet as well, and seeing how art and my work communicates to that kind of community, to see what elements of that land and how much of it is a human experience and how much of viewing and being is part of geography. So no, very exciting times, to be honest.
Very exciting, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing your new developments. Well, Laurence, thank you so much for this extremely inspirational conversation today. I'm hoping to meet you in person at AKA at the start of the exhibition. I'm so looking forward to seeing your sculptures with Adam David Taylor's paintings. So I guess I'll see you in September. Thank you very much.
Joanna, thank you so much for your wonderful questions. I look forward to meeting you.
Me too. Likewise. Bye.
Bye.